Greetings, everyone. This is a small workshop that should help you experience what I call ensightenment. This is a process that had happened to me, and I'm trying to rearrange things in a way that you can have the similar experience, or rather, a shift of insight that could give you something that was given to me. I was going through a tough time in my life, and it was so intense. I decided that I needed to do something about it. I tried to go back to the laws of attraction and visualizing and feeling, um, making the situation better. Nothing seemed to work. And I went for a hypnotherapy session with someone that I knew, and I wound up having a discussion with them, Eastern philosophy and the teaching that you are not your thoughts. And I had a lot of resistance to this because I studied Eastern philosophy for decades, and I thought that I knew better, that my ego was getting in the way. And then the hypnotherapist's comment to me was, well, if your theory about the laws of attraction are that you attract that which you hold in your attention, can you not at least agree and see that if your thoughts are able to be observed, then you cannot be your thoughts? And if you cannot be your thoughts, how can you control them? And in that moment, I had an enormous shift. And this is what had come about. So the first step, what I call part one, stage one, is probably the most difficult step to take. So what I want you to do is, as we talk about this, and I want you to explore your own mind, you probably would want to stop or pause the video to really mull it over and see if you could process it. And the reason this is difficult is because this is not something you process in the usual fashion with discerning thinking and figuring out and understanding. It's probably the complete opposite of that. And I'll tell you what I'm talking about. And again, if you have trouble, pause, try to see it for yourself. It's not thinking about it. This is not something that I want you to adopt another belief or agree with. It's something I want you to see for yourself. And there's a direct seeing that's definitely possible. So the first thing about this teaching is you cannot be that which you can observe. I'll repeat that. You cannot be that which you can observe. The explanation is if you can observe something, there has to be something prior to it to witness it, observe it, or agree that it is you. Investigate and see that you cannot be that which you can observe. Most likely, you're going to want to pause and read this, mull this over a little bit. One way of looking at this is that when you're observing something and everything that's in your observable space, whether it be internal with thoughts, feelings, and sensations and perceptions, beliefs and associations, or things outside you, like the computer monitor, your cell phone, things that are surrounding you, the chair, the walls, the outside, the clouds, the grass, whatever is in your ability to observe and to perceive, notice that in order to observe something, it has to be an object outside of you. For when you observe something and you're witness to something, that something you're observing has to be witnessed by something else. So the very act of perceiving any content or any subject or object by its own first definition cannot be you. For who is it that's witnessing these things? and try to restrain for saying, well, I'm one with or I'm a part of it, because those are just concepts at this point. You can have them after the workshop and you can have them now if you like, but try to suspend that. And I want you to avoid concept and belief. And I want you to see directly, so that this is not just something I'm telling you to believe and asking you to accept something. Don't reject it. I'm not asking you to accept anything. See for yourself. Again, you cannot be that which you can observe. If you can observe something, there has to be something prior to it to witness it. Observe it or agree that it is you. Investigate and see that you cannot be that which you can observe. You may pause and go back to this as much as you like. Once you see that you cannot be that which you can observe, the next stage is saying that upon seeing that you cannot be that which you can observe, realize you cannot know what you are by affirmation, only by negation. Again, upon seeing that you cannot be what you can observe, realize you cannot know what you are by affirmation, only by negation. In other words, whatever can be perceived cannot be me. So I can never, ever be that which I can perceive. Therefore, I can never know what I am. And so the practice in Eastern philosophy is to say the words, by saying to whatever you see, not this, not this. You surrender to knowing what you are and just being what you are. For I cannot know what I am. I can only know that I am. So by using not this, not this, it's sort of like pressing the clutch while driving a moving vehicle. The transmission is disengaged, and now you're temporarily free. So by saying not this, not this, whatever you are perceiving to think that you are something, if you're assuming or perceiving or thinking or believing that you are something, you could automatically say not this, not this. And it'll give you the space for whatever you come up with, whenever you say, I think I'm a person, I'm a child of God, I'm a pure soul, or I am my body, or whatever it is, that's something that can be perceived. Therefore, there has to be something prior to that to witness that idea or that belief that I am the body, or I am this guy, or I am this woman, or I am fill in the blank. Whatever is after the words I am is a false identification, because it can be perceived. And if it can be perceived, therefore it cannot be what I am. And so we say, I cannot know what I am. I can only know that I am. So the only thing that we can truly know is that we exist. We can't say, I am this or I am that. So enlightenment is like this picture. This picture is a picture of a cow. And some may take a couple of minutes to see it, some several minutes. But once you see the cow, you'll always see it. And so I will try to help you a little bit. For here is the ear of it. Here's the top of the head. Here's the other ear coming out of the picture. And here's the eyes. Here's the body. So the body is horizontal, and the face is kind of turned to look at you. Here's the snoot and here's the nose. You may pause and take your time with this to see the cow. But once you see the cow, you now see the cow. Notice that once you see the cow, you always see the cow. The reason I'm showing you this is to get to stage 3. In stage 3, consciousness is explained as a combination of awareness and subject. I've never heard this explanation before, except for Nisargadatta, who died in 1981. I never met him. I've only read about him. Reading his words is what led me to the greatest realization of my life. And that's what this is about. He was the only one that ever gave a definition of consciousness in such a way. Consciousness is a combination of awareness and subject. For we have to be aware of something to be conscious. Consciousness needs awareness and subject, but awareness is independent. It doesn't need anything. So consciousness is awareness and subject. You have to be conscious of something to be conscious. But awareness can exist independently, beyond subject, free of subject. There's a point in meditation, if you practice meditation, when you come to a place of just pure rest, pure awareness, the mind is at complete rest. In Sanskrit, they call this samadhi. This means no me. So in this place of complete resting, when the mind completely comes to rest, all there is pure awareness. And there's no awareness of oneself as an individual. And yet it's perfectly, purely at rest. And it is at this pure resting place that we can see with our own inner vision that this place of complete resting and its awareness itself is always there. It's always in our experience. It's always the backdrop. We can't even call it experience because it's always been there. There's never been a time that it hasn't been there. So if awareness wasn't there, we would not even be aware that it was missing. So awareness is the constant backdrop consistently our whole life. It can't be called an experience because the definition of experience is something that which begins and ends. And it's never began and it never ended. Nisargadatta had a saying, happiness is where the I isn't. Happiness is where the I isn't. And said, no, now samadhi may be a place that most people in this world don't experience. It's not as difficult as it sounds to get to. And there are those who experience samadhi and have trouble getting back to it over and over again. What they haven't been taught is that is the normal, common state of pure awareness that's ever present all the time, every time. And that's always accessible to us. Part 2. And you may fast forward to this. Some say that this is a distraction and bothers them to get into. But if you want a scientific breakdown and definition to help clear any doubts so that your mind can rationalize and see even from the rational state and the rational processing of information to recognize and see beyond the shadow of a doubt what we're talking about. So the first thing we should talk about is matter. And atoms seems to be the first thing we need to talk about when it comes to reality and existence. Now, the size difference is that you would literally have to blow up an atom, one atom, you'd have to blow it up to the size of the dome of St. Peter's Square. For the electron to be hundreds of thousands of times smaller than the nucleus, which is the size of a grain of salt, when you blow it up to the size of the dome of St. Peter's Square. And the electrons sometimes appear as a parcel of energy and sometimes as a wave. This is very important. So the double slit experiment is an experiment to explain this phenomena of the relationship between perceiving the universe as a physical manifestation or appearance, and that the building blocks are particles, and also waves of infinite potentiality is another brand, if you will, of the way reality can appear, or the way matter can appear. So physicists took studies, and this is a one that I like. It shot random paintballs at two panels that had a slit in the middle. And as you see the paintballs that are hitting the panel randomly in that area, only the paintballs that were able to get through the slit that hit the back wall made a silhouette of the shape of the slit that they passed through. This is common sense. The only paintballs that made it through those two panels were the ones in the slit. Therefore, when it was barraged sporadically and randomly, only the paintballs that made it through would cast the silhouette of the shape of the slit that they went through. This is just common sense and a physical experiment that can be recreated as often as times as you want to prepare. Now, another way of doing this is that when they did the double slit, when they had the panel that had a double split and conducted the same experiment with the same random barraging of paintballs, you saw the same thing, only a double slit in the back. So in this particular experiment, matter was operating and appearing as particles, as in paintballs. But when you did it with water, that expresses itself in waves. If you drop the same paintballs, pebbles, or round solid objects into the water, the ripples, which were the acting of the waves of the water, the way they kind of create waves as we see them in the water, when it hits the two panels with the slit in the middle, you'll see that the only waves that make it through continue to act like waves. And you'll see on the back wall, the highest concentration of vibrational waves is in the center, which they signify as a slit, similar to the silhouette of the slit that they passed through. Okay, here's the really strange part that has kind of blown all the physicists away. When they conducted the experiment with waves, as in water, and they used a double slit, what happened is, as the waves hit the double slits, they break up and they actually interfere with each other, the waves that make it through. And as they interfere with each other, when they hit the back wall, instead of one concentrated area in the middle, there was one major concentrated area in the middle and significantly less as they went outside. And so the way waves behave is they create an interference pattern, because they were interacting with each other and interfering with each other. They created an interference pattern. Now they did the same experiment with a gun that shoots light, and they also do it with electrons. So they have a gun that shoots electrons, and when it went through the double slit, the electrons act like waves, which had completely baffled scientists. They were saying, I thought electrons were made of particles, that electrons was a particle, and as they're being shot through, why are they behaving like waves? This completely blew them away, because they really should be acting like paintballs. So what they did is they said that we need to put a camera or a monitor at the very edge of each slit to see what happens as they come out of the gun. When do they become, when do they switch to becoming going from a particle to a wave? They needed to observe this. So when they put the cameras on there, the outcome is the electrons acted like particles. So when you're not watching electrons with a double slit experiment, they act as waves, infinite potentiality, and they create an interference pattern. When consciousness is attached to it and someone's watching, they act as particles. So in quantum physics, they believe that the physical appearance of existence and matter is because our consciousness is perceiving infinite potentiality of waves as particles, and it becomes real to us. Now, it's not saying that the universe and what we see and experience isn't real, that the chair isn't real. It's just the way it appears to us is not real. And if you think that this is pseudoscience, maybe ask some of the survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki what happens when the true energy of atoms is released. Stage 2, human body cells go through replenishment. As you eat, drink, and breathe, you're absorbing atoms and molecules through the cellular walls into your body and evacuating other atoms and molecules that now go through your evacuation system. In the course of 1 year, the average person eats approximately 1,500 pounds of food. There's a tremendous amount of exchange and replenishment going on a cellular level constantly throughout the day as we eat, drink, breathe, and evacuate. Scientists tell us, and people will argue over the math, they say that 98% of the atoms and molecules in your entire body are replenished every year. The other 2%, some argue between 5 to 7 years. It's almost like you're an apartment building where there are builders working, removing bricks and replacing bricks on a constant basis. And over the course of a year, every single brick is replaced with different bricks. And so probably the biggest cause of suffering of all mankind is the impression or misidentification that someone is their body. Well, if you think you're your body rather, you have a problem. Are you the 2021 model, the 1990 model, the 1970 model, the 1965 model? Because every year you virtually have a new body. The only thing that stays the same is the relative blueprint of the shape. Stage 3, mind. So we know we're not the body. But what about the mind? What is the mind? The mind is made up of thoughts, feelings, emotions, beliefs, perceptions, and associations. They too have changed completely and dramatically over the duration of our existence. And so this mind, the main purpose of it was humans have evolved into having an image of themselves as an ego, as a separate individual organism, separate from the environment and the universe, as in a very highly advanced substitute for instinct. So that instead of having instinct we use memory and association and the process, remembering that plant is poisonous, that one is food, that one killed, wasn't, not going to eat it, which animals are predators and which animals are prey. And so also throughout our own individual evolution, our inner feelings, our experiences of sensations that evolve into feelings are our inner truths responding to a present situation. Eventually, situations get too incredibly painful to deal with. Things that happen in family life, in our immediate community, school, religion, our country, things so severely contradict our inner truths and break our trust that we literally have to project and use the mind to create an ego or a sense of self that's purely mental as a means to protect our heart from being broken all the time. This ego serves to protect the individual and preserve the species. This is an ingenious conspiracy by nature for the humans can procreate, populate the planet, and survive. So the ego is a defense mechanism that's elaborately evolved from instinct. Another aspect of this is that people will often say, you only use 10% of your brain. My question, who uses the other 90%? We assume that we are this ego, this consciousness. What we don't recognize is that there is so much going on in our very body that who is operating, who is maintaining the body temperature, who is maintaining the blood pressure, who is coordinating the nervous system with every single muscle in the body just to coordinate the process of scratching your head requires an incredible amount of processing of information. And so it's almost like you're one person sitting at a board of directors meeting, and what you want to happen in your life is such a struggle because we wind up doing things we don't want to do, and we can't figure out how to stay committed to the things we want to do. Now it's almost like you only get one vote at a board of directors meeting, and we have to figure out how to communicate with the rest of the board to get what you want to happen. But you are not the individual vote. You're the whole company. You're the community of 50 trillion cells. If anyone is an individual entity, it's the individual cells. And yet, it takes 50 trillion cells to make up a person that becomes conscious. But do we intimately know of every cell in the 50 trillion cell system? Are we conscious of them? Okay, who am I? The story of I am. In Exodus 3:14, Moses has this experience of God manifesting in the burning bush. There are many esoteric symbols in this that can lead a person to contemplate on a very deep, unconscious level what this represents, to get out of the ego and to be stimulating deeper archetypical in the collective deeper archetypes in the collective unconscious. What's representing here? We won't go into that here because we don't need to. But in this conversation, God is telling him what he wants him to do. He wants him to go to Egypt. Tell him that, tell the Hebrews, the Israelites, that he has heard their cries. And so Moses is probably saying, I'm wanted for murder and they're going to kill me, but I'll do it for you, God. But before I go, they're going to ask me what your name is. What do I tell them your name is? And God's reply, don't trust me, go look in the Bible Exodus 3:14, he says, I am that I am. Tell them, I am has sent me to you. Now, the Greek and Latin word ego or ego, the literal translation of the word ego is I. So ego is not a concept. And when people talk about my ego, there's no such thing as my ego, because that's something outside myself. Ego is really your sense of self, the center of your awareness. And so at the trial of Jesus, he says, when they ask him, tell us plainly, are you the Messiah? His response is, it is you that say, I am. And in the text, the words I am capitalized. Now you should know that the Hebrews don't pronounce the name of God, and they may say it means something else. I am becoming, variations of that, but all means the same thing. You're announcing your existence, saying I am. And so at the trial, most people don't realize what Jesus' real name is. Jesus is the English translation of Latin, of the Greek, of the Aramaic, of the Hebrew. Some people say it's Yeshua, Yahshua, Yehoshua, depending on what scholar determines on when they change the dialect. But it all means one who saves through I am. Now, we should know that in Judaism, during the periods well after Moses, up until Jesus, evolved a concept that no one was holy enough to pronounce God's name, because it's not really I am. It's not the English translation. The Hebrew only used consonants. And so the name of God used in that context was Yud He Vav He. We see it as YHWH. And so they had felt that no one was pure enough to pronounce God's name. Therefore, if you do in public, it should be punishable by death. But yet prior to this, God had said many times in the Bible to use his name. Tell them to use my name. Tell them my name is I am. It wasn't seen to be secret or hidden. And we could argue and speculate why that happened and what was the justification for that, right, wrong, and indifferent. But it led to the point where the only time the name, whatever it's truly pronounced, was uttered was on Yom Kippur by the high priest here, who would go into the sanctuary, to the holies of holies, the sanctum sanctorum of the temple, alone. And they used to tie a rope around his leg. And as he went in, they used to bang cymbals and gongs to prevent anyone from hearing it as he would pronounce the name over the ark, holies of holies. And should he say it incorrectly or if he was unworthy, the way they would know it is they'd be able to pull him out by the rope around his leg. And so Jesus was saying out loud when he says, it is you that say I am, he was really saying and pronouncing God's name. Because what happens afterwards, the way Caiaphas, who was the high priest of that year, stands up and rips his garments in half, is the proper behavior of when someone blasphemes by saying the Lord's name out loud in public. And so what does this really have to do with this shift in identity? So let's fast forward to Romana Maharishi. Romana Maharishi died in 1951, and he was undoubtedly the greatest mystic of the 20th century. He had said that when one approaches the subject of how to know who someone really is, when someone authentically asks the question, who am I? And tries to know. For without really knowing who am I really know nothing else. Everything else is based in predicated on assumption or illusion or ignorance. So he said that when you truly approach the subject of who am I, you usually begin with I am Michael, I am John, I am Linda, I am Mary, I am fill in the blank. And he says if you pay attention, the third word relies on the preposition of the first word, the I. Without the I, the subject of Michael, Mary, who's ever speaking, introducing their existence, is totally dependent on that first word I. So he recommends find the I. Find the I. And you'll most likely find your mind likes to dissolve into your heart, where your original consciousness is. Nisargadatta, I call him my guru because by reading him, I had a shift and I was in pure awareness for several weeks and months. And things have never been the same since this shift. He always used to say, go in the direction of the I am. What he means by go in the direction of the I am is become aware of awareness and withdraw your interest into all contents of consciousness, any subject or object, anything externally, anything in your body, anything subjectively, internally, your thoughts, your feelings, your sensations, any kind of sound, smell, taste, everything around you. Just simply and gently withdraw your interest in all contents of consciousness and just be aware of awareness itself and remain and stay as the witness. For who's in search of enlightenment? Who fails? What is left in me to even be reincarnated? I'm going to play you this short video.
Nisargadatta was a wild old Indian. Nisargadatta was a wild old Indian guy who had sold cigarettes on the street and then somehow had this extraordinary realization and sat in his apartment and waited for people to visit. He was, as you can see from the pictures, not a particularly handsome man, yet there was some way in which he radiated a kind of joy and beauty and presence that you would just fall in love with him, or that there was something so magnetic, not even about him, but about this enormous void that he was the mouthpiece for. These words came from far beyond this little old Indian guy who'd sold beaties, and to be in his presence was remarkable. Part of what made it so extraordinary to be with Nisargadatta was to be with someone who wanted nothing from you. I have never in my life been with another person who wanted less from me or anybody. And in that not wanting anything, there was a sense of tremendous freedom and tremendous love. Sometimes he would look at people and he would say, I don't understand you, as if to pull his hair out. He was always gesticulating and so forth. He would say, you never want what's true. You are so entangled in the illusion of the false. He said, you want what you don't have, and you don't have what you want, and so you suffer, and you continue to suffer. Then he said, it's so perplexing. Why not simply reverse it? Why not want what you have and not want what you don't have? He said, it's so simple. You could be happy. Freedom is here for the taking. You want little things, you could have the entire universe, eternity, eternal life. Take that. Essential point of his teaching is that we already are absolutely free, and that there is nothing that we have to do or make or become or change ourselves into. We simply have to see the truth of life, which is that we are not this body nor this mind, that they are a play of elements, if you will, and that when we understand that, there comes this extraordinary happiness and freedom. That's all. Maharaj spoke of the I am, or I amness, as it is also translated. He spoke of it as the bridge between that which is temporal and that which is eternal. That to recognize that all the forms of senses, of seeing and hearing and smelling and thinking, are changing, and to step outside that, to get bigger, one becomes, if you will, the witness to these things. And this is what he called the I amness. Everything changes, but this witnessing which can know what is so. And when you rest in that witnessing, in that I amness, then as a bridge it becomes possible to turn that witnessing back to itself and see that there is no one who witnesses, that witnessing appears like the sun does in the morning and disappears, and beyond that is space and emptiness and what he called love and wisdom. Maharaj put it this way. He said, when I see I am nothing, that is wisdom. And when I see I am everything, that is love. And between those two, my life moves. Nisargadatta Maharaj gave me the deepest experience that I have ever had of closeness to a human being who was truly free. And that freedom was filled with love and aliveness and spontaneity and fearlessness and a place of absolute stillness beyond all of that. That touched that same energy in myself, and now I know it's true. It's that simple. Absolute freedom and happiness is yours to be had in a moment, that it is everyone's birthright, and that if you wish this, you only have to genuinely look into the question, who am I? To see this I am that witnesses it all, and then turn to the I am and see that even that too arises and passes away, and find your absolute freedom. It's there for you. Maharaj put it this way. He said, when I see I am nothing, that is wisdom. And when I see I am everything, that is love. And between those two, my life moves.
Made it clearer. I love the way he puts this. And so we come to the final part of the story, final part of the workshop. So when we can recognize the power of being in witness mode, how do we balance that? How do we stay there? Let me just say that if you're having thoughts that staying in witness mode is a place of passivity and not taking responsibility and accountability for your life. Let me tell you a story. When I first had this shift about 10 years ago, soon after, my nephew, who I was very close to, he was born with spina bifida, and he was only 29 years old, and he went into a coma because he came down with pneumonia, and he was on oxygen, and he in and out of coma and being intubated, and he was laying in a hospital bed, and there was the oxygen meter on him, and they kept on telling us that if it drops below 90 to let us know. And so I went, dropped below 90, and it was beeping. And I went outside and I said to them, I said, it's below 90. And they said, it's okay. It's okay. I go, well, you told me to tell you if it dropped below 90. And they were like, it's okay. It's okay. So I said to myself, okay, be the witness, because everything in this universe, everything on every level, the entire planet Earth and everything else is operated and maintained and sustained by a power that is not me. I am the witness of this. I don't control the wind and the weather and the climate, and I don't make the grass grow and any of this stuff. So, and literally, my own body and my own mind does not belong to me. It is part of the elements of this planet that is completely maintained and sustained by something that's not me. And so I said, be the witness, because I know in the witness, everything else gets to um, be taken care of by whoever is taking care of it. So I went back inside the room and it dropped below 80. And so I went outside and I said to the nurse, it dropped below 80. And it was a male nurse that just said, okay, okay. He didn't speak very good English. And I started to get very agitated because my two speeds are retreat and be completely, paralyzed, or attack and go Brooklyn on them, right? But I'm balancing myself and I'm saying, be the witness, right? So I go back inside. Now it drops below 70, it's in the 60s. And they come back, and I said, now it's below 70. And the guy looks at me and says, okay, okay. And then all of a sudden, in the state of witnessing, something came from far beyond me, a power I cannot explain, with incredible force came through me. And I said something to them like, what are you going to wait for? Him to go into cardiac arrest? Now get in there now. This was extremely intense. Of course, I raised my voice, but it wasn't like I was yelling. The power that came through me was so unbelievable that there was four nurses that hands were uncontrollably trembling dramatically at the power that came through me. And they went in and they intubated him, and he was able to live long enough to say goodbye to his mother. And so the point I'm trying to make is that this is not about escaping responsibility and accountability and going into a place of reserve or cowardness. This is a place of the ultimate power of realizing what really has the power and who we really are, and letting the absolute infinite power of the universe to do what it's going to do anyway, and just not in its way. So once we have this shift and we realize to stay as witness, we're going to be shaken out of witness often. Things are going to get us angry. We're going to fall into fear. We're going to experience lust, and we're going to lose consciousness or awareness of our true self, the awareness itself. Because what happened to me was I was literally reading a blog, and there was a comment that someone said, and they said basically enlightenment is when you see you're not the body and not the mind, and that you now identify with the awareness itself. When you see the awareness itself is who you really are, that's enlightenment. You're enlightened. The rest of the journey, and that's only the beginning of the journey, is cutting the ties and the threads to that which distracts you and pulls you out of the state of being a pure witness. That witness is always witnessing, it's always there. And so, what pulls us out of this, the things that cause us to be angry or afraid or lustful or whatever the distraction is that makes us lose our awareness of ourselves, is sort of like a centrifugal force of the ego. We have to cultivate in us chi or prana to break free of that. And if you have to employ specific diets, you find out it's going to be different for everyone. You have to work with your ego through your psychology. You might have to go into therapy, meditation, yoga, your lifestyle, how you think, what you say, what kind of music you listen to. how you process and heal from the emotional wounds of your childhood, all your triggers. These are the things we have to deal with. It's very important to approach doing this not from the state of that I have to deal with my ego, diet, lifestyle, and heal from my emotional wounds of childhood to obtain who I am. That's not what this is. Whether you get any of these things done, whether you never gain any kind of stability in witness mode, never will prevent you from being who you actually really are. Who you are is who you are. It always was and always will be. It was never born and will never die. It cannot starve. It cannot drown. It cannot be affected by anything and everything we fear. It cannot be augmented by getting anything we want. And so who we are is always who we are. But we approach the diet, the ego, the lifestyle, our speech, and healing our emotional wounds, but not identifying with the person that needs to do these things. You just do them. And as you do them, you will get caught up and identify, and you will lose this stability of being witness. And you will mourn losing that experience. But that doesn't change who you are. Because we try to keep, if you had the shift through this video that I'm referring to, and we experience this deeper insight, you'll stay in that place either for several minutes, several weeks, several months, or several years. It will probably go because it's not an object that's supposed to stay stable. What's stable is awareness. That's all that's stable. It's literally infinitely solid. And so I'd like to end this with a quote from one of my favorite poets, T.S. Eliot. We shall not cease from our explorations, for at the end of all our explorings, we will arrive at the beginning and know the place for the first time.